So, right now, the story everywhere is the same. Harry and Meghan are coming back to the UK, and the whole world is watching it as a moment of hope. A family may be finding its way back together, but there's one person inside the palace for whom this return isn't hopeful at all. It's threatening. And that person is Camilla. Because while everyone else is asking whether Harry can reconcile with his father, whether the brothers can heal, whether the door is finally opening, Camilla is asking a very different question, one she can't say out loud. What does Harry's return mean for me? And the answer, the one that reportedly left her in tears, is that it changes everything. Because a returning Harry, welcomed home, embraced by his father, standing once again inside the family, is a Harry who reshapes the entire balance of the household and not in Camilla's favor. Charles, meanwhile, is caught in the middle of a palace crisis he didn't choose, between the son he wants back and the wife who fears what that son's return will cost her. Before we go any further, two quick things. First, if you're new here, we're Crown Watch, and we break down the royal stories that actually matter, so hit subscribe. And second, if you want the details the mainstream coverage never touches, the story behind the story, head to theroyalfiles.com. There's something on that site we don't talk about here on the channel. A hidden piece of royal history most people never find, and once you do, you'll see this whole family differently. The link is in the description. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with why Harry's return, of all things, would move Camilla to tears, because on the surface, it doesn't obviously threaten her at all. And the answer is about something most people never think about, which is the quiet architecture of a royal household. The invisible structure of who stands where, who matters most, whose influence carries weight. For years now, with Harry gone and the family reshaped around Charles's reign, Camilla has occupied a position of real centrality. She is the queen. She is beside the king. And in Harry's absence, the emotional and structural center of the family settled in a particular way, one that placed her firmly at its heart. A returning Harry disturbs that settlement, because Harry isn't just a person. He's Diana's son, the public's sentimental favorite, the prince whose homecoming would command enormous attention and enormous sympathy. And every ounce of attention and sympathy that flows to Harry is attention and sympathy that shifts the balance away from Camilla. That's the thing the hopeful headlines miss. A family reconciliation isn't only an emotional event, it's a structural one. It moves people around inside the household, changes who is central and who is peripheral, rewrites the quiet hierarchy that governs everything. And Camilla, who understands that hierarchy better than almost anyone, because she spent decades fighting her way up it, understood immediately what Harry's return would mean. Not disaster exactly, but displacement. A shift of the center away from her toward the returning son the public adores, and after everything she endured to reach her position. The prospect of watching it quietly eroded by a homecoming she can't oppose without looking heartless, that's what reportedly brought the tears. Before we go further, real quick, if you're into deep dives on royal stories that actually sit with the complexity instead of just picking a side, hit subscribe and join us here at Crown Watch. We are building something good. Okay, back to it. Now, I want to be fair to Camilla here, because this story doesn't work if you flatten her into a villain, and this is one of the situations where she deserves genuine sympathy. Because Camilla is trapped, she cannot oppose Harry's return, she cannot say a word against it. If she did, she would instantly become the wicked stepmother of the story, the woman standing between a father and his son, the villain blocking a reconciliation the whole world wants. So she has to smile, she has to welcome it publicly, she has to perform support for a development that threatens her, while never once being allowed to express what it actually costs her. That's an agonizing position. To be destabilized by something required to celebrate it at the same time. Her tears weren't the tears of a schemer whose plot had failed. They were the tears of a woman watching her hard-won security shift beneath her with no way to say so. But here's the first twist, and it's the one that reframes the whole thing. Because Camilla's fear isn't really about Harry as a person. She has no particular quarrel with him. Her fear is about what his return represents, which is the reopening of a question she thought was settled. For years, the family structure had hardened around a particular arrangement, one in which Camilla's position was central and secure. Harry's return cracks that arrangement open again, And once it's open, everything inside it becomes negotiable. Who stands where? Whose influence matters? What the family looks like going forward? Camilla had spent years getting the answer to those questions to settle in her favor, and a returning Harry threatens to unsettle all of it, to throw the household back into a period of flux where her position, so recently secured, becomes uncertain again. And that's why this is a palace crisis and not just a family reunion. Because a reunion is warm and simple. A restructuring is complicated and dangerous. And what Harry's return actually triggers is a restructuring, a reopening of the entire question of how the family is organized at exactly the moment Camilla thought that question was closed. Charles wants the reunion, Camilla fears the restructuring, and they're the same event, seen from two different positions inside the same household. Now here's where Charles enters the crisis, and where his impossible position becomes clear, because Charles genuinely wants Harry back. The longing to heal the rift with his son before it's too late is real and deep. But Charles is also married to Camilla, bound to her by decades of loyalty, and he cannot be blind to what Harry's return does to her. So Charles is caught once again between the two people who have defined the hardest parts of his life, the son he lost and wants to recover, and the wife he chose and has always protected. Every step toward Harry is a step that unsettles Camilla. Every reassurance to Camilla is a step that complicates the reunion with Harry. There is no move Charles can make that doesn't cost him something with one of them. That's the crisis. Not a scandal, not a confrontation, but an impossible balance between two people he cannot bear to fail, who cannot both get what they need. Then came the second twist, the one that deepened the crisis. Because Camilla's fear, it turns out, wasn't only about attention and sympathy. It was about something more concrete. A returning Harry raises the question of what place, if any, he would hold in the family going forward, and any place made for Harry has to come from somewhere. The household only has so much room at its center, so much attention, so much of the king's time and focus. And every bit of it that shifts toward the returning son is a bit that shifts away from the wife who has occupied that center in his absence. Camilla wasn't imagining a threat. She was doing the arithmetic that everyone in that family learns to do, the arithmetic of a finite center and the constant competition for it. And the arithmetic told her that Harry's return, however warm, meant less room for her. And here's what makes Charles's crisis so much sharper than the headlines suggest. Because it isn't only that he's caught between a son and a wife, it's that the two things he most wants are, at this moment, in direct competition. He wants Harry home. He wants Camilla secure. And the return that gives him the first appears to Camilla to threaten the second. Charles has spent his entire reign trying to hold his family together through sheer will, refusing to choose between the people he loves. This crisis forces the choice back onto him in a new form. Not choose one person over another exactly, but manage a homecoming so carefully that neither of them is wounded, which may be the hardest thing he has ever attempted. Because emotions this large on a stage this public do not manage easily. And then there's Meghan, and the fact that this is not just Harry returning, but a whole family returning, a wife and children who are part of any homecoming now. That complicates the arithmetic further, because it isn't a single prince coming back to the fold. It's an entire branch of the family, with its own gravity, its own story, its own public following. For Camilla, that makes the shift feel even larger, because the center isn't just moving toward Harry, it's moving toward an entire returning household that carries enormous public interest. The reunion the headlines imagine is warm and simple. The reality Camilla is bracing for is a whole second family re-entering the frame, and every eye in the country turning to watch them do it. Charles feels the weight of that too, because welcoming Harry means welcoming all of it. The wife, the children, the life they built apart, the years of grievance that came with it. It is not a small door to open, and the wider he opens it, the more the household shifts and the more Camilla feels the ground move. Every generous instinct Charles has toward his son enlarges the very thing his wife fears. That's the cruelty of his position. His kindness and her security are pulling in opposite directions, and he loves them both too much to sacrifice either. Now here's where Princess Anne enters, and where the crisis found its clearest voice. Because Anne, the family's steadiest presence, looked at the situation without the emotion clouding everyone else's view, and she named the thing no one wanted to name, that the family was confusing two separate questions again. The first was whether Harry should be welcomed home as a son, and Anne's view was that of course he should, that a family that cannot forgive is not much of a family. The second was whether his return should be allowed to restructure the household, to reshuffle positions, to reopen settled questions, and on that, Anne was far more cautious. Because a personal reconciliation, she pointed out, does not require rebuilding the entire family architecture. Harry could come home without the household being turned upside down. The reunion and the restructuring were not the same thing, and treating them as if they were was what had turned a hopeful moment into a crisis. And this is the insight that actually offered a way through. Because if the family could separate the two questions, if they could welcome Harry personally without automatically reopening every structural question about positions and influence, then Camilla's fear could be addressed without blocking the reunion. Harry could come home as a son, and Camilla's position could remain what it was, because a homecoming isn't the same as a restructuring. Anne saw that the crisis wasn't really about Harry at all. It was about the family's habit of treating every emotional event as a structural one, of letting warmth and hierarchy get tangled together until no one could tell them apart. Untangle them, and the crisis eased. But here's the third twist, the one that showed how hard that untangling would actually be. Because the very thing that made Harry's return so emotionally powerful, the public's deep love for him as Diana's son, was also the thing that made it structurally destabilizing. You could not have the warmth without the weight. A returning Harry would draw enormous public sympathy, and that sympathy, whether anyone intended it or not, would shift the family's center of gravity toward him. So the clean separation Anne proposed, welcome the son without reshuffling the household, was harder in practice than in principle, because Harry's emotional gravity was real and could not simply be switched off. The family could try to keep the reunion personal, but the public would make it structural whether the family liked it or not. Charles asked the question at the heart of the crisis. Could he have both, the son back and the wife secure? And the honest answer was that he could, but only if the family managed the return with enormous care, keeping the personal and the structural firmly separate, refusing to let the emotion of the reunion be used to reopen questions of position and place. It was possible, but it required discipline, and it required everyone, including Harry, including Camilla, to accept that a homecoming was a homecoming and not a renegotiation of the entire household. Whether that discipline could hold in a family this emotional with a returning son this beloved was the real question, and no one could answer it yet. Camilla, for her part, was reportedly reassured, at least partly, by Anne's framing, because what Anne offered her was the one thing she needed, the recognition that welcoming Harry did not have to mean displacing her, that the reunion could be genuine and her position could remain secure because they were separate questions. It didn't erase her fear entirely, because the public's emotional pull toward Harry was beyond anyone's control, but it gave her something to hold on to, a version of the future in which Harry came home and she was not quietly pushed aside. And for a woman who had been facing that homecoming as a pure threat, the possibility that it might not cost her everything was at least something. There's also William to consider, because his position in this crisis is its own quiet complication. Because while Camilla fears the structural shift and Charles longs for the reunion, William carries the deepest personal wound of anyone, the broken brotherhood that no reshuffling of the household can simply repair. And here's the strange alignment that emerges. William, hurt and weary, and Camilla, anxious and displaced, both have reasons to want the return kept limited, kept personal, kept from reshaping everything. They arrive at that caution from completely different places. William from a wounded brother's guardedness, and Camilla from a threatened queen's self-preservation, but they land in a similar spot. Neither wants the homecoming to become a full restructuring. That quiet, unspoken alignment between two people who otherwise share little is one of the stranger currents running beneath this crisis, and it's part of why the pull toward a limited, careful return is stronger than the warm headlines suggest. But William, unlike Camilla, cannot be accused of self-interest for his caution, because his wound is a brother's wound, universally understood. Camilla's caution, by contrast, has to stay hidden, because hers looks like self-interest even when it's really just fear. That asymmetry is its own small cruelty. Two people wanting a similar thing, one of them allowed to say it, the other forced into silence and tears. Now here comes the final twist, the one that adds the layer nobody wants to say out loud. Because underneath all of it, under the structural anxiety and the household arithmetic, there is a shadow over this entire story. And it's the shadow of the woman Harry's return inevitably summons. Because Harry is Diana's son, and Diana is the one person whose memory Camilla has never been able to escape. For decades, Camilla has lived in that shadow, measured against that memory, defined in relation to the woman who came before her. And a returning Harry brings Diana's memory flooding back into the center of the family story, because he is her living image, her son, the boy she left behind. Every camera on Harry is, in a sense, a camera on Diana's legacy. And for Camilla, that may be the deepest fear of all, not just the loss of position, but the return of the comparison she has spent her whole life trying to survive. Harry coming home doesn't just reshape the household, it brings Diana back into the room. And Camilla knows better than anyone that in that room, she has never been the one the public loves. Nobody celebrated. That's the detail that stays with me, and it's especially true of Camilla, because there was no version of this that felt like a victory to her. Even the reassurance Anne offered was really just the softening of a threat, not the removal of one. Camilla was facing a future in which the man she married would be pulled, understandably and rightly, toward the son he'd lost, and in which the ghost she'd spent decades trying to outrun would be summoned back into the heart of the family by that son's return. She wasn't crying because she'd lost a fight. She was crying because she could see clearly that the ground was about to shift and that there was nothing she could do about it except smile and pretend to welcome it. Before the matter settled, Anne reportedly said something that lands harder the longer you sit with it. A family can make room for everyone it loves. The hard part is convincing each person that making room for another doesn't mean losing their own. And there's a question worth sitting with underneath all of this, which is why the return is happening now, at this particular moment. Because these things don't surface by accident. The coming home headlines, the sense of a thaw, the movement toward reconciliation, all of it points to something genuinely shifting behind the scenes. And that shift, whatever is driving it, arrives at a moment when the household had finally settled into a stable shape, with Camilla secure at its center. That timing is exactly what makes it a crisis rather than just good news. A return a few years earlier, or a few years later, might have landed differently. This one lands on a household that had just stopped moving and threatens to set it in motion again. The whole institution is bracing for what happens when a settled family is asked to make room for a returning one, and no one, not Charles, not Camilla, not even Anne, knows yet whether that room can be made without someone being pushed out of the center to create it. That uncertainty is the real crisis. Not a single dramatic confrontation, but the slow dawning recognition that welcoming Harry home means reopening questions everyone thought were closed, and that reopening them puts Camilla's hard-won place back into play. She isn't crying over an insult or a fight. She's crying over the return of uncertainty itself, the loss of the one thing she'd finally achieved, which was the feeling that her position was settled and safe. So here's where I hand it to you, because I genuinely want to know where you land. Is Camilla's fear understandable? The reasonable anxiety of a woman watching her hard-won position destabilized by a homecoming she can't oppose? Or is it a sign that she has always valued her standing more than the family's healing? Should Harry's return be allowed to reshape the household, restoring the center of gravity to Diana's son? Or is Anne right that a reunion and a restructuring are two different things, and that the family can have the first without the second? And does the crisis Charles faces prove that this family can never fully heal? Because every act of love toward one member is a wound to another. There is no clean answer, and anyone who hands you one quickly hasn't sat with the full weight of it. And the thing I can't stop thinking about as all these coming home headlines run, is how differently the same event looks depending on where you're standing. To the world, Harry's return is a reunion, a healing, a family finding its way back. To Camilla, it's the ground shifting beneath her, the return of a comparison she can never win, the quiet erosion of everything she fought to secure. Both of those things are true at once. That's what makes this family so endlessly, painfully human. A homecoming that is joy for one person and crisis for another, unfolding in the same rooms at the same time, with no way to give everyone what they need. And there's more to this story than the headlines are telling you, more than even these tears reveal. When it surfaces, you already know where to look for the parts nobody else will tell you. The next chapter of this family is still being written, and when it moves, we will be here to talk about it. If this video made you see any part of this story differently, drop your position in the comments. I read every one of them. And on a question this complicated, I genuinely want to know where you land. Subscribe if you are not already with us, because the next chapter is coming, and it is going to be one worth watching.